Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine stepping into a painting, a grand, bustling scene, but then something strange happens. The figures inside, a young princess, her attendants, even this imposing artist at his easel, they seem to turn their gaze, not somewhere else in the room, but directly at you. And then, here's the really mind-bending part. What if the artist himself is there, brush ready, not just painting the scene, but somehow, cleverly, painting you? It's a concept that just shatters that normal barrier between art and the person looking at it. It pulls you right into the heart of the thing, blurring lines like few other artworks ever have. Today, we're doing a deep dive into Las Meninas by Diego Velázquez. Now, this isn't just any canvas, it's this monumental, sprawling scene from a 17th century Spanish court. The title, it literally means the Maids of Honor. But trust me, the first visual hit, that's just the beginning. Our mission here with this deep dive, it isn't just about admiring a beautiful painting, although let's be clear, it is absolutely one of history's most beautiful. No, it's about carefully peeling back layer after layer. We want to understand its deep, really lasting questions about reality, about representation, about what art even is. We're going to explore why this masterpiece from 1656 feels so incredibly relevant today, how it keeps challenging how we see things and invites us into this centuries-long conversation.
Yeah, what's truly extraordinary about Las Meninas is exactly that, how it goes so far beyond being just, a snapshot of court life. The moment you see it, it hits you as this brilliant conceptual puzzle, almost a philosophical maze, really. And it actively invites us, the viewers, to step inside its complex web of meaning. It's not passive. It really demands that you engage with it. And it's amazing how this painting from centuries ago still has this unique power to challenge our ideas about reality and, well, the very essence of making art. It's a painting that just keeps making you think again about your position, not just physically where you're standing, but like conceptually. Where do you stand in relation to the art? What are you actually seeing?
So let's start by grounding ourselves in the sheer physical presence of this thing. When you first stand in front of Las Meninas, the scale alone is just wow. We're talking about a truly massive canvas. It's about 3.2 meters high and 2.8 meters wide. That's nearly 10.5 feet tall by 9 feet wide. Just picture that. Imagine a wall in your house, completely taken over by this single immense painting. It's not just a big picture. It's designed to totally immerse you, like a wall-sized window into this room in a Spanish palace. Its size isn't just for show, for grandeur. It's a very deliberate choice by Velázquez. It's engineered to pull you right into that space, make you feel like you've literally just walked into the room where this scene is unfolding. You don't just look at it, you feel like you're in it.
Absolutely. You become part of the space.
And this monumental work, painted in 1656, it's really no exaggeration to call it one of the most important masterpieces of Spanish Baroque art. And honestly, of all Western painting. It comes from Spain's Siglo de Oro, its golden age. That was a period of incredible cultural, artistic, literary flourishing, one of the most vibrant times in European history, really. Now, okay, it's titled The Maids of Honor. And at first glance, yeah, it looks like a grand scene of daily court life. But its significance goes way, way beyond just showing us what happened in the palace. It's this deep meditation on the nature of art itself, the fabric of reality, and that tricky, often confusing relationship between what's represented and who's looking. It
Yeah.
doesn't just show you a scene, it makes you ask what's actually real here inside these painted borders. And what is the artist really trying to say about how we see things, about perception?
That's such a crucial point. Because to really get the boldness and the depth of Las Meninas, you have to connect it to the bigger picture, the historical and cultural context of 17th century Spain. This painting perfectly embodies Velázquez's huge effort to understand and show the world, not just as a gifted court painter, which he was, but as this high society figure watching human nature, watching the complexities of power up close. It's really the culmination of his artistic and intellectual journey within a remarkably paradoxical time. On one hand, Spain in the 17th century was arguably the most powerful kingdom in Europe. It had immense wealth pouring in from its American colonies, especially those silver mines in Potosi. I mean, an unbelievable amount of resources flowing into the royal treasury. This wealth supported this incredibly lavish court under King Philip IV, grand art projects, a huge military presence across Europe.
Right, the image of power.
Exactly. But beneath that glittering surface, Spain was dealing with some serious internal problems and, frankly, severe economic challenges. The constant, really expensive wars across Europe, like the end of the 30 Years' War, conflicts with France, they were just draining the treasury relentlessly. Plus, there were internal political issues like the Catalan Revolt, the Portuguese Restoration War. These things were splitting the kingdom's unity. And economic mismanagement, rampant inflation, decline in local industries, it led to widespread hardship for a lot of people.
So it's a complex picture. Powerful on the outside, but struggling within.
Precisely. So, while King Philip IV ruled over this culturally vibrant, politically important center, it was also a very complex, often turbulent place, marked by both imperial strength and this kind of underlying decay. And in that kind of environment, art, especially for court painters like Velázquez, often served as a really critical tool. It was meant to showcase royal grandeur, project this image of undeniable power, and, let's be honest, function as pretty sophisticated political propaganda to boost the monarchy's image during these struggles.
Ah, okay. Art as messaging.
Yes, but what makes Velázquez so extraordinary and what makes Las Meninas so revolutionary is how he went beyond those normal expectations. He lifted art way past just state messaging. He showed its potential for much deeper, original interpretation, exploring universal truths about perception, representation, existence itself. He wasn't just recording, he was reflecting, thinking.
That's a really fascinating backdrop. So let's turn our gaze now to the genius who actually conjured this world onto the canvas, Diego Velázquez. Who was he? And what was it about his unique way of seeing things that really set him apart in such a vibrant but also demanding time? Born in 1599 in Seville, he's widely seen not just as one of Spain's greatest painters, but truly one of the titans of art history, full stop. He started his training under Francisco Pacheco, who was a well-known artist and art theorist in Seville. Pacheco also happened to be Velázquez's father-in-law. So this early exposure to both making art and thinking about art, that undoubtedly shaped his very intellectual approach to painting.
That connection to theory early on is important.
Definitely. After his apprenticeship, Velázquez's talent, it just exploded. It quickly caught the eye of the royal court, which led him to move to Madrid. By 1623, he becomes King Philip V's court painter, and this position rapidly raised him to an incredibly high status within the court itself. This wasn't just a job, it was this prestigious appointment. It gave him unique access to the royal family, the inner workings of the palace. He wasn't just some craftsman making things on commission. He became this respected member of the intellectual and social elite, close to the intimate lives of the monarchy.
A privileged position, absolutely, giving him incredible insight.
Exactly. Insight into the human condition right at the top levels of power. Now, what really set Velázquez apart was his unique artistic style. While his art definitely followed the realist and naturalist path of Spanish Baroque, he took it somewhere entirely new, especially in his portraits. His figures weren't just accurate depictions, though they captured likeness with uncanny precision. They had something much deeper. The phrase used is deep observations about the existential nature of human beings.
That's a powerful way to put it.
Isn't it? That's what truly marked his work out and why it still resonates so strongly. He wasn't just painting a face, he was painting a soul, an inner life, this tangible sense of who that person was deep down. This approach gave his portraits this unprecedented psychological depth, made them feel incredibly alive, insightful, and just profoundly human.
It's really captivating to see how Velázquez worked within the Baroque movement, but also profoundly changed it. Baroque art, generally speaking, it's all about drama and grandeur, right? Think of the typical features: dynamic movement, often these swirling compositions, intense emotion, a visual richness that's meant to impress, maybe overwhelm the senses. And one of his most famous techniques is chiaroscuro. That stark light-shadow contrast creates drama, three-dimensionality, heightens emotion, emphasizes maybe divine presence. It's a style often linked to the Counter-Reformation absolute monarchies, aiming to get strong, emotional, spiritual reactions from the viewer.
Right, that very dramatic, high-contrast look.
Exactly. But Spanish Baroque, it really carved its own path. It diverged quite a bit from the more ornate Italian or the dramatic Flemish styles. What truly defined Spanish Baroque was this intense, almost relentless search for raw realism and naturalism. While other places might have focused on idealized beauty, classical forms, or spiritual ecstasy, Spanish artists often zeroed in on the unvarnished truth of everyday moments and the deep psychological complexity of people. They'd paint saints and beggars with the same kind of seriousness, often bringing this stark, unembellished reality to their canvases. Think of Zurbaran's intense spiritual realism or Ribera's visceral naturalism. Velázquez built on that foundation, but then pushed it even further.
So a more grounded, psychologically focused realism within the Baroque.
Precisely. And Velázquez's refined approach perfectly shows this distinct Spanish style, but with his own unique mastery. He handled his figures very directly, very intimately. He shied away from that idealized beauty you often saw in Renaissance or even some other Baroque art. He wasn't interested in making people look perfect or heroic. He was deeply interested in making them look real. in all their human complexity. His realistic use of light and color, combined with this natural tranquility you see in his figures, even in grand settings that somehow balance the typical Baroque drama with this profound sense of looking inward. The result: visually stunning works that felt deeply human, psychologically profound, incredibly nuanced. They invite you, the viewer, to connect with the subjects on a much deeper, more empathetic level. His ability to say so much with seemingly simple poses and just masterful control of natural light, it's truly remarkable. He painted the world as he saw it, with total honesty and extraordinary empathy.
Okay, now let's zoom right in. Let's really dissect the canvas itself. Look at the key players and how they're arranged so remarkably in Las Meninas. The central figure, the absolute focal point, no question, is Infanta Margarita Teresa, the young princess. Despite being so young, she was only about 5 when this was painted, she completely commands attention. Her posture, that exquisite dress, her direct, almost unsettlingly grown-up gaze. She's lit by this soft, natural light, almost glowing. Your eye goes straight to her amidst all the activity in that big room. And it's worth remembering, as a royal child, especially from one of these powerful, intermarrying European monarchies, she wasn't just a kid. She was a valuable diplomatic piece, destined for future dynastic marriages, which she did eventually fulfill, marrying Emperor Leopold I.
A political figure even at that age.
Absolutely. Now, flanking her are her attendants, the actual meninas, meaning maids of honor, that give the painting its name. These 2 maidservants, Doña Maria Agustina Sarmiento de Sotomayor and Doña Isabel de Velasco, they're actively interacting with the princess, creating this dynamic movement in the scene. One is offering her a drink from a little red cup, the other is curtsying. Their actions show the intricate social structure, the strict rules of aristocratic childcare back then. They aren't just standing there. Their interactions add to the lively, yet still very formal feeling of the courtly room. And look closely, you'll also see the dwarf, Mari Barbola, and the fidget, Nicolásito Pertusato, who's playfully nudging a big dog, a mastiff, adds another layer of authenticity, detail to this bustling court life scene.
Right, it feels like a real lived-in moment, despite the formality.
Exactly. And then there's Velázquez himself. He's positioned strategically over on the left side of the canvas. Very prominent. He's got his huge canvas, his brush, his palette in hand, actively painting. Including himself like this, it's not just a signature or, an ego thing. It fundamentally changes the work. It goes beyond a simple portrait or just depicting a scene. It immediately starts this meta-discussion, a conversation within the painting, about the act of making art, about the artist's role, about what representation even is.
He's making the process part of the subject.
Precisely. And he's wearing the Cross of Santiago on his chest. That's prestigious knightly order he was only granted after the painting was finished. Apparently, King Philip V himself ordered it added later. This little detail, this anachronism, along with the keys to the palace chamber on his belt, it subtly points to the artist's rising social and intellectual status. By putting himself in such a prominent, active role in a royal portrait so close to the Infanta, he's not just elevating painting from a craft to an intellectual pursuit. He's also boldly stating his own high standing within the court and society.
Building right on that, the details in the background are what really amplify the painting's profound implications for perspective and, well, the nature of reality itself. If you look at the doorway way in the back, you see that mysterious figure, José Nieto Velázquez. He was the Queen's Chamberlain and, interestingly, a relative of the artist. He's standing there, silhouetted against a bright opening. His presence does a couple of things. It really enhances the spatial depth of the room, draws your eye not just side to side, but deep into the background. He acts almost like a window out of the main scene, or maybe a guardian figure. He subtly invites you to think about the world beyond this room, suggesting maybe another important space just out of view.
Opening up the space even further.
Right. This simple detail complicates the closed-off feeling of the painting, hinting at unseen areas, unseen stories. But maybe the most talked about, and undeniably crucial element, is the mirror reflection on the back wall. This mirror clearly reflects the faces of King Philip IV and Queen Mariana. Now, this is where Las Meninas gets truly mind-bending, almost a philosophical riddle.
Okay, yeah, the mirror. This is the big one.
It is, because this reflection implies that the monarchs are standing exactly where we, the viewers, are standing. Or, maybe even more intriguingly, where Velázquez's own massive canvas, the one we only see the back of, is positioned, meaning he is actively painting them. It creates this astonishing, almost paradoxical loop. It unites your perspective, the viewers, with that of the powerful king and queen. It makes you, the observer, an essential, maybe even the central part of the reality being shown.
They're just looking.
Or are we the ones who
paint?
Exactly. The painting deliberately doesn't give a clear answer. It holds that ambiguity. forces you to participate in creating its meaning. This whole complex interplay, the central infanta, the busy attendants, the artist's bold self-portrait, that figure in the doorway, and especially the mirror's reflection, it all works together to blur the lines between illusion and reality with incredible sophistication. It plays with time and space, making the scene feel alive, immediate, unsettlingly present. It forces you to question the boundaries. What's represented on the canvas versus what's actually real? Is the painting showing us a moment caught in time, or is it creating a moment that draws us into its own constructed reality? This deep philosophical questioning, built right into the structure of the work, is why it keeps challenging and provoking us centuries later. It's a painting that doesn't just show, it thinks.
Absolutely. This painting is so much more than just a court scene. It's a real conversation starter about what art itself is. Las Meninas isn't just a record of 17th century Spanish life. It's a deep meditation on what art fundamentally does, how it represents the world, and the incredibly complex, shifting relationship it creates with you, the viewer. It's not passive viewing at all. It's this active, intellectual, even emotional engagement that just pulls you into its world.
It demands your attention.
It really does. And what's truly fascinating here is what some call its metaphotographic structure. Now, metaphotographic, that might sound a bit academic, but it just means the painting is deeply self-referential. It's drawing attention to its own creation, to the fact that it is a painting, primarily through the artist being visibly right there in the frame, holding his brush and palette, looking out. Velázquez isn't trying to hide that this is a constructed image. In fact, he's celebrating it, making the process itself a central part of the subject. He shows you the tools, the artist, and the implied subject, the king and queen in the mirror, all in one grand scene. He forces you to acknowledge the artifice, the flat canvas, the paint, even while the illusion of depth in life feels so incredibly real.
It's kind of deconstruction of painting, centuries early.
Exactly, long before deconstruction was even a concept. And because of this brilliant strategy, you, the viewer, you're never just a passive observer looking at a fixed image. Velázquez cleverly designs the composition so that you're constantly shifted between different, often contradictory roles. One moment, you're implicitly positioned as the one doing the painting, standing where Velázquez stands, looking at his subjects. Then suddenly you feel like you're in the painting, standing right where the king and queen are reflected, seeing what they see, maybe even being the subject Velázquez is painting. And finally, you're just the observer from outside the frame, trying to figure out this complex scene.
It keeps shifting your ground.
Constantly. It creates this dynamic, changing relationship with the work, makes it an experience, not just something you look at. It actively engages your mind, constantly making you reassess your position, your perspective, your understanding. It's like a constant dance between being a voyeur, a participant, and maybe even the subject.
That constant shifting of perspective is precisely what makes Las Meninas such a powerful investigation into that very thin line between reality and illusion. The painting masterfully uses all sorts of techniques, from the subtle and direct gazes of the figures to the complex games of perspective, and of course that pivotal mirror reflection to keep you perpetually guessing. Are the king and queen really in the room with us, standing just outside the frame? Or are they just reflections of their painted image on Velázquez's canvas that we can't see? Are the figures in the painting looking right at us, engaging us? Or are they looking at a painting of us, making us the unseen subject? This deep ambiguity is exactly what gives the work its lasting power. It turns it from a static image into this living, breathing philosophical question.
It really does make you think.
No wonder, then, that the famous Spanish philosopher and art critic José Ortega y Gasset called Las Meninas a masterpiece for understanding the nature of reality. And that's not hyperbole. It really highlights the painting's incredible philosophical depth, its ability to make us question the very ground we stand on, conceptually speaking. It challenges us to think that what we see as real is often constructed, filtered through our own perspective, and inherently shaped by our position as observers. It's like a visual essay on epistemology. It forces us to ask, how do we know what we know? How reliable is our perception?
Suggesting reality isn't just objective fact.
Exactly. It suggests reality is not some objective truth we just absorb, but a complex, multi-layered thing we construct. So we step back and see the bigger picture. All these clever elements, the crossing gazes, the mysterious reflections, the meticulously built spatial relationships, they all reveal the multi-layered and inherently complex nature of perception itself. It suggests reality isn't simple, objective, observed from a fixed point. Instead, it's this dynamic dance between what's presented to us, how we interpret it through our own filters, and where we place ourselves in that interpretation. Velázquez forces us to face the idea that our understanding of the world is always, well, to some degree, a subjective construction. This is a remarkably deep insight for a 17th century painting, and it still resonates powerfully today with contemporary philosophy, even modern psychology. It feels utterly timeless.
And beyond all that conceptual genius we've just talked about, Las Meninas is, quite simply, an absolute masterclass in technical skill. It's not just what Velázquez painted, but how he painted it that gives it such enduring power, such real life, makes it feel so uncannily present. His brushwork, for example, is just masterful, incredible variation depending on what he wants you to focus on. For the figures in front, like the Infanta and her maids, the brushstrokes are remarkably clear and detailed. You can almost feel the textures of their rich clothes, the shine on the satin, the delicate lace. You see the subtle shifts in their expressions. They seem incredibly tactile, immediate.
Almost photographic in its precision there.
Almost.
Uh-huh.
But then, as your eye moves towards the back, to the distant walls, the paintings hanging there, even that figure in the doorway, the brushwork gets much looser, broader, almost abstract if you get really close. Now, this isn't carelessness or him rushing. It's a deliberate, highly sophisticated technique. It's a method that creates atmospheric perspective. It subtly guides your eye, makes the background recede and blur, while the foreground figures just pop with amazing clarity.
It's an optical effect, really.
It is. Your eye does the work of resolving those looser strokes into forms when you stand back, just like Velázquez planned. It's a brilliant way to control your gaze and create this sense of deep, breathing space that very few artists before him managed so effortlessly. He was anticipating Impressionist techniques centuries before they happened.
Absolutely. Way ahead of his time.
And then there's his incredible use of light. Velázquez took that typical Baroque chiaroscuro, that dramatic play of bright light and deep shadow, and he interpreted it in his own unique, very naturalistic way. Instead of harsh, theatrical spotlights you often see in Baroque art, here you have this soft, diffused, almost ambient natural light filling the whole space. Seems to be coming from that large window to the right, just out of our view. This gentle light clarifies the figures with beautiful precision, makes them clearly visible, but at the same time creates this tangible sense of depth and volume in the room.
It's not just lighting figures, it's lighting the air, the space itself.
Exactly. It gives the illusion of breathable air in the painting, and pay close attention to how the light falls right on Infanta Margarita's face and her fair hair. It highlights her central importance, not just compositionally, she's the brightest spot, but also socially and politically. Reinforces her status as the royal subject everything revolves around. It's subtle, but incredibly powerful. Makes the scene feel almost real enough to touch.
It's truly fascinating how Velázquez achieves such a rich, compelling atmosphere, such deep psychological feeling, with what is essentially a remarkably limited color palette. If you really look closely at Las Meninas, you'll see it's dominated by earthy browns, subtle grays, and these soft, glowing whites. Sure, there are touches of rich reds and blues in the clothes of the Infanta and her attendants, but it's not this riot of bright primary colors, which might seem strange for a painting this grand and complex, especially if you compare it to, say, the lavish palettes of Rubens or Titian.
Right, you'd almost expect more vibrant color for a royal scene.
You might think so. But this seemingly simple palette is precisely what amplifies the expression of the figures and enhances the whole atmosphere of the place instead of overwhelming it. By consciously limiting his color range, Velázquez shows this incredible command over visual storytelling with profound restraint. He doesn't need flashy colors to make his point or create drama. Instead, he manipulates subtle changes in tone, in value, the interplay of light and shadow to create an amazing sense of depth, texture, and psychological realism.
So the limited palette actually helps focus things.
Exactly. It lets your eye focus intently on the interactions between the figures, the small details of their expressions, the complex spatial relationships in the room, rather than being distracted by a whole spectrum of colors. For instance, the way he uses different shades of gray and brown to show the receding walls, or the subtle warmth in the whites of the Infanta's dress. It creates this profound sense of atmosphere. It says so much about his sophisticated understanding of how our eyes perceive and interpret an image. Proves that true brilliance often lies in refined simplicity. He really uses color structurally to build reality on the canvas, guiding your eye and your emotions with amazing subtlety.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, moving beyond the technical and philosophical brilliance we've been discussing. Las Meninas didn't just impress people at the time, it echoed across centuries, influencing artists and thinkers in deep and sometimes unexpected ways. When it was first shown in 1656, it immediately caused a stir in Spanish and wider European art circles. It was obvious even then that this wasn't just another court portrait. It was something totally new, groundbreaking, revolutionary in how it approached painting and perspective. Contemporary accounts show it was celebrated right away for its sheer skill.
Its reputation was immediate.
Definitely. And its recognition only grew through the 18th and 19th centuries. Later generations of artists and critics admired it, studied its composition, its technical brilliance. For example, the famous French painter Edouard Manet, who was so key in the shift to modern art, he deeply admired Velázquez, famously called him the painter of painters. You can see clear echoes of Las Meninas in Manet's own revolutionary works, like A Bar at the Folies Bergère from 1882. He similarly plays with mirror reflections, the viewer's gaze, ambiguous spaces, directly channeling Velázquez's bold innovations.
Manet definitely learned from him.
Oh, yeah. And then you have someone like Marcel Duchamp, a giant of 20th century conceptual art. He recognized and celebrated Las Meninas' pioneering composition and those metaphotographic qualities we talked about. For Duchamp, who was challenging the very definition of what art is, Velázquez's self-referential style and engagement with the viewer must have really resonated. These artists understood that Velázquez was doing something radically modern, centuries before modernism officially kicked off. He was playing with the viewer's role, the artist's role, the nature of representation itself in a way that fundamentally challenged how people saw things and laid crucial groundwork for future art movements.
That lasting admiration is powerful, absolutely. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, the 20th century saw an even deeper, more profound engagement with Las Meninas, especially philosophically. I mean, the most famous example is the renowned French philosopher Michel Foucault. He dedicated the entire opening chapter of his major 1966 book, The Order of Things, to analyzing Las Meninas.
Foucault, right. That's a huge endorsement.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
Foucault didn't just interpret it as art. He treated it like a critical text. He explored it through these complex lenses of power, knowledge, and representation. He argued that the painting is this profound commentary on how we categorize order and understand the world, particularly highlighting the shifting ways of thinking in the modern age, even foreshadowing postmodern ideas long before those terms really existed. For Foucault, the painting's genius was its ability to expose the systems of representation themselves, making the very act of knowing and seeing visible.
Wow, so seeing the painting as revealing how we think.
Precisely. This kind of analytical focus from figures like Foucault truly lifts Las Meninas way beyond just being a historical painting. It's now widely seen as this powerful symbol of the structural and conceptual transformation of painting itself. It's not just about the Spanish Golden Age, it's about the evolution of art as a medium that can critically look at its own existence and its relationship with reality. Velázquez's clever use of perspective, his unprecedented self-inclusion in a royal portrait, a genre usually focused only on the monarch, and the complex interactive relationship he sets up with the viewer. All these things directly anticipate and shed light on fundamental debates in modern art. It speaks to the artist's role not just as a craftsman, but as a deep thinker, to the act of seeing as active, not passive, and to the construction of reality as something fluid, interpretable. This enduring relevance is why it's still such a hot topic for study, fascination, and admiration in art history, philosophy, critical theory today. It constantly makes us ask, can art truly reflect reality, or does it actually create a new reality that we then step into?
So after all this, what does it all mean for us, centuries later? Las Meninas isn't just some old painting hanging quietly in a museum. It feels like a living, breathing dialogue that keeps challenging us, provoking us, fascinating us, centuries after Velázquez put down his brush. Its value is truly universal, timeless. It goes way beyond its specific historical context of 17th century Spain, or just showing off Velázquez's technical skill, as amazing and groundbreaking as that skill undeniably is.
It transcends its time and place.
Completely. At its heart, this painting keeps asking fundamental questions about art itself. It probes that often blurry line between reality and representation. It delves into the mysterious, profound nature of the artist's creative process. And crucially, it demands your active participation as the viewer. It invites you into its world and makes you part of its ongoing mystery, like a co-conspirator in its conceptual game. It asks you to rethink everything you thought you knew about looking at art, about seeing, and about the very nature of what's real.
And what's truly revolutionary about Velázquez's masterpiece, why it keeps captivating us, is that it never lets the viewer just be passive. Instead, it cleverly draws you in, creates this visually, conceptually, and emotionally interactive experience that keeps evolving with every look, every new gaze. It really pulls you into a conversation rather than just giving you a statement.
Conversation across centuries.
Exactly. So here's a final thought to take away. If Las Meninas is a painting that truly engages you, the viewer, by making you part of its reality, what other forms of art or media in our own time do something similar? Think about immersive digital experiences, maybe virtual realities or interactive stories we engage with today. Do they also blur those lines between creation, observation, and participation? Do they force us to question where the art truly begins and where it ends and where we fit into it all? Are we just consuming them, or are we, like those standing before Las Meninas, becoming an essential part of their unfolding reality?